Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I'm Windhoof, and this is a look at the Mage Talents for the Legion Beta. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, we're going to be looking at the Fire Talents. For our level 15 talents, we have Pyromaniac. Casting Pyroblast while Hot Streak is active has a 10% chance to instantly reactivate the Hot Streak. Next we have Conflagration. Fireball also applies Conflagration to the target, dealing an additional X amount of fire damage over 8 seconds. Enemies affected by either Conflagration or Ignite have a 10% chance to flare up and deal X amount of fire damage to nearby enemies. Next we have Firestarter. Your Fireball spell always deals a critical strike when the target is above 90% health. For our level 30 talents, we have Shimmer. This replaces Blink, teleports you 20 yards forward unless something is in the way, unaffected by the global cooldown and castable while casting. Next we have Cauterize. Fatal damage instead brings you to 35% health and then burns you for 28% of your maximum health over 8 seconds. While burning, movement slowing effects are suspended and your movement speed is increased by 150%. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 minutes. Next we have Cold Snap. Ice Block now has 2 charges and also heals you for 3% of your maximum health every 1 second. For our level 45 talents, we have Mirror Image. Creates 3 copies of you nearby which cast spells and attacks your enemy lasts 40 seconds. Next we have Runa Power. Places a Runa Power on the ground for 10 seconds, which increases your spell damage by 50% while you stand around within 8 yards. Third, we have Enchanter's Flow. Magical energies flow through you while in combat, building up 20% increased damage and then diminishing down to 4% increased damage, cycling every 10 seconds. Next, we have our level 60 talents. First, we have Blast Wave. Causes an explosion around the target enemy or ally, dealing X amount of fire damage to all enemies within 8 yards and reducing movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. A primary enemy target will take 100% increased damage. Next we have Flame On. Immediately grants 2 charges of Inferno Blast. After that we have Controlled Burn. When you gain Heating Up, you have a 10% chance to instantly activate Hot Streak. Level 75 talents, we have Ice Flows. Makes your next mage spell with a cast time shorter than 10 seconds, castable while moving, unaffected by the global cooldown and castable while casting. Maximum 3 charges. Next we have Ring of Frost. Summons a Ring of Frost for 10 seconds at the target location. Enemies entering the ring are incapacitated for 10 seconds, limited to 10 targets. After that we have Ice Ward. Frost Nova now has 2 charges. For our level 90 talents, we have Living Bomb. The target becomes a Living Bomb, taking X amount of fire damage over 11.1 seconds, and then exploding to deal an additional X amount of fire damage to the target and all other targets within 10 yards. Other enemies hit by this explosion also become a Living Bomb, but this effect cannot spread further. Next we have Unstable Magic. Fireball has a 30% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% additional damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. Next we have Flame Patch. Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flame which burns enemies within it for X amount of fire damage over 8 seconds. For our level 100 talents we have Kindling. Your Fireball, Pyroblast, and Infernal Blast critical strikes reduce the remaining cooldown on combustion by 1 second. Cinder Storm throws a spread of 6 cinders that travel in an arc, each dealing X amount of fire damage to enemies it hits. Damage increased by 30% if the target is affected by your Ignite. And finally we have Meteor. Calls down a meteor which lands at a target location after 3 seconds, dealing X amount of fire damage, split evenly between all targets within 8 yards, and burns the ground, dealing X amount of fire damage over 8 seconds to all enemies in the area. Next we'll be looking at the talents for Arcane. For our level 15 talents, we have Arcane Familiar. Summons a familiar that attacks your enemies and increases your maximum mana by 10%, lasts 1 hour. Next we have Presence of Mind. Causes your next 2 Arcane Blasts to be instant cast. Then we have Torrent. Arcane Barrage deals 25% increased damage per target it hits. For our level 30 talents, they are the same as the previous specializations. For our level 45 talents, these are the same as the previous specialization. For our level 60 talents, we have Supernova. Pulses arcane energy around the target enemy or ally, dealing X amount of arcane damage to all enemies within 8 yards and knocking them upward. A primary enemy target will take 100% increased damage. Next we have Charged Up. Immediately grants 4 arcane charges. Then we have Words of Power. Grants 1% increased chance to trigger arcane missiles per 20% of your mana you have unspent. Our level 75 talents are the same as the previous specializations. For our level 90 talents, we have Nether Tempest. Places a Nether Tempest on the target, which deals X amount of arcane damage over 12 seconds to the target and X amount to all enemies within 10 yards, limit to 1 target. Damage increased by 79% per arcane charge. Next we have Unstable Magic. Arcane Blast has a 15% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% additional damage to the target and other enemies within 8 yards. Third we have Erosion. Your attacks erode the target's resistance, increasing all damage the target takes from your spells by 1%, stacking up to 8 times. After 3 seconds of not taking damage from your spells, the target's effect decreases by 1% every 1 second. And for our level 100 talents, we have Overpowered. Casting arcane missiles extends arcane power by 2 seconds. Then we have Quickening. Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, and Arcane Explosion also grant 2% haste for 6 seconds, stacking up to 100 times. This effect is cleared when you cast Arcane Barrage. And finally, we have Arcane Orb. Launches an Arcane Orb forward from your position, traveling up to 40 yards, dealing X amount of arcane damage to enemies it passes through. And finally, we'll be taking a look at the Frost talents. For our level 15 talents, we have Ray of Frost. For the next 10 seconds, you can channel a beam of icy power at an enemy, slowing movement by 50% and dealing X amount of frost damage every 0.9 seconds. Each time Ray of Frost deals damage, its damage increases by 20%. Next, we have Lonely Winter. Replaces Summon Water Elemental. You can no longer summon your Water Elemental, but Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Frozen Orb, and Icicles deal 25% increased damage. Third, we have Bone Chilling. Whenever you attempt to chill a target, you gain Bone Chilling, increasing all frost damage you deal by 0.5% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 16 times. Our level 30 and 45 talents are the same as the previous specializations. For our level 60 talents, we have Ice Nova. Causes a whirl of icy wind around the target enemy or ally, dealing X amount of frost damage to all enemies within 8 yards, and freezing them in place for 2 seconds. A primary enemy target will take 100% increased damage. Next, we have Frozen Touch. Immediately generates 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. Then we have Splintering Ice. Your Ice Lance and Icicles now hit a second nearby target for 75% damage. Our level 75 talents are the same as the previous specialization. Our level 90 talents, we have Frostbomb. Places a Frostbomb on the target for 12 seconds. Limit 1 target. Your Ice Lance that benefits from Shatter will trigger the release of a wave of freezing ice, dealing X amount of frost damage to the target and X amount of frost damage to all other enemies within 10 yards. Next, we have Unstable Magic. Frostbolt has a 20% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% additional damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. Third, we have Arctic Gale. Increases Blizzard's damage by 30% and its area of effect by 20%. And finally, our level 100 talents, we have Thermal Void. Casting Ice Lance extends your icy veins by 2 seconds. Then we have Glacial Spike. Conjures a massive spike of ice and merges your current icicles into it. It impales your target, dealing X amount of damage plus the damage stored in from your icicles, and freezes the target in place for 4 seconds. Damage may interrupt the freezing effect. Requires 5 icicle stacks to cast. Ice Lance no longer launches icicles. And finally, we have Comet Storm. Calls down a series of 7 icy comets on and around the target, each of which deals X amount of frost damage to all enemies within 4 yards of its impact. Thank you for watching the talents for the mage. If you liked this video, please like. If you didn't like, go ahead and hit the dislike button. I don't really care. And if you're interested in any other videos I've made, please click the subscribe button. And if you'd like to see the other talents for the other classes, please click on any of the videos that you see before you. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Later!